Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm here with Senator Moore this morning. I'm Robert Grossman, and we have some new information that's come out of the State House and information concerning Senator Moore in the town. Senator Moore has been tapped for 2 legislative committee chairmanships. The senator takes helm of higher education and municipal committees.
No, it's great to be starting my 5th term. It's really going by fast, and luckily I've been able to get the chairmanship for the Committee on Higher Education for the last 3 terms, and going into this 5th term, I was actually allowed to maintain that chairmanship. As everyone knows, the President of the Senate appoints the chairman to each committee, and I was lucky enough to get reappointed to the Committee on Higher Education, but also this year, hopefully it's going to be, it will work out well. I have the honor of chairing the joint committee on municipalities and regional government, and this committee deals with any piece of the legislation that comes before the legislature dealing with municipalities, the structure of town government, how they operate, the home rule petitions that cities and towns put forth. When they go, the majority of them, after they're passed by the city or town, then go to the legislature, and the majority of these home rule petitions then go before this committee. So hopefully we'll be able to act upon a lot of these requests from municipalities very quickly. We've already had 1 hearing. We've got another one coming up tomorrow on April 11th, and there's roughly about, I think, 300 or 400 bills actually go through this committee. We've got about a little over 100 filed right now, and from what I'm told from the House Chair, who's actually from Worcester, Jim O'Day, so we have 2 central Massachusetts legislators who are chairing these committees, that roughly about 300 home rule petitions actually will be filed before the legislature. And then, so over the course of the year, as cities and towns pass these home rule petitions, they'll be going before us. So I'm hoping that, my previous experience as a selectman will be of help with me going through this process, and reviewing and working with the committee and the other city and town officials.
The Joint Committee on Higher Education Committee reviews legislation that pertains to the network of public and private colleges and university in the state. Bills that fall under the committee's purview range from college tuition and student loans to campus sexual violence. The Joint Committee on Municipalities and Regional Government considers local home rule petitions, regional planning, zoning, and other matters related to countries and the regional government.
As a former law enforcement officer, I'm pleased that I was also given or allowed to retain my role as the Vice Chairman of the Joint Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security. I've also been appointed to serve as a member of 4 other committees, including Senate Ways and Means, Senate Post Audit and Oversight, State Bonding, State Capital Expenditures, State Assets, and the Joint Committee on State Administration and Regulatory Oversight.
Senator Moore has established an agenda for 2017 to 2018. Priority bills address animal protection, sexual violence, and abuse prevention.
As we round out the 3rd month of the new legislative session, I'm pleased to say I filed more than 80 bills to pursue a diverse range of policy initiatives. Chief among them are bills that would help prevent abuse of persons with disabilities, deter illegal harm of wildlife, and curb college campus sexual violence. The state of a new session is always, the start of a new session is always an exciting time that includes crafting a legislative agenda and filing bills that hopefully will be able to usher through the legislature to the governor's desk. And I look forward and proud to be working and advancing legislation that responds to the needs of the local residents, and while also overarching issues facing the Commonwealth as a whole.
In an effort to protect persons with disabilities, you filed legislation that would establish an abuse registry within the Department of Development Services. The registry would identify individuals who have been found to have more committed abuse against disabled persons in an effort to screen prospective employees who intend to work within the licensed caretaker field. The bill, SD.583, resembles protections already enacted in other states across the country.
As the Senate Chair of the Joint Committee on Higher Education, I also refiled legislation SD 871 to prevent sexual violence on college campuses. The comprehensive bill, which advanced through the Senate last session and ultimately did not receive any votes or advancement in the House of Representatives, would codify and complement federal requirements and establish new state-level policies for all our higher education institutions in the Commonwealth.
You also recognize that existing anti-poaching laws have remained widely unchanged since the 1930s. As such, you have refiled legislation that would address the illegal harming or killing of wildlife. The legislation elevates existing penalties for individuals convicted of illegally harming or killing wildlife. The bill SD.654 also requires the Commonwealth to enter into a nationwide law enforcement network known as the Interstate Wildlife Violator Compact. Massachusetts remains one of only 4 non-member states and the only Northeast state that does not participate. The compact allows for reciprocity with other states for the purpose of license suspensions to prevent wildlife violators who have lost their hunting, trapping, or fishing privileges from circumventing license revocations.
You know, as you were reading, I was thinking the legislation that Bob was just talking about has been passed by the Senate in 2 different legislative sessions. So 4 years ago we started working on that, and the Senate's passed it twice. So we're now starting our 3rd term that we'll be working on this. We thought we had it enacted last session. We were working with the House Ways and Means Committee on trying to finalize some language to get it done in informal session, and it just never came to fruition. But the other bill that has really been something that we put a lot of effort into last session, and that was the sexual assault on college campuses. It's funny how 1 or 2 years can really momentum on something can really change. When we first started working on this bill over 2.5 years ago, there was a lot of publicity dealing with our colleges and universities who were under Title IX investigation for not providing the services that they should be for our students relative to sexual assaults. Last session, I don't specifically name the groups, but there were 1 or 2 groups that who advocate for our victims of sexual assault that were concerned that the legislation would codify federal law, where we did thinking that we didn't need to codify it, but and they like this. They like the aspect of the state establishing standards, but they were worried that was going to cause confusion, and they supported the bill, but they didn't want to. They weren't sure of how effective it would actually be. With the new administration in Washington and the talk of deregulation, they have a lot of concern with that. The new administration might come in and just start watering down some of the protections for students. So it's actually interesting that they came to us this session, and now they're strongly advocating for it. And a lot of the arguments that we used last session about federal regulations can change as state regulations, and they weren't too concerned about it. Now that the advocates for the victims are coming forward, and they're working. Hopefully they'll be working strong to endorse and support this bill.
Senator Moore has received top marks for environmental voting records for the past term. The Mass Audubon recently issued its 2015-2016 report card, and to inform citizens of the legislators' performances in protecting the nature of Massachusetts. You have received a 100% score on many of your votes over a dozen environmental bills and budget items.
I'm proud to have supported legislative initiatives that enhance our environment and protect our natural surroundings. We have some of the world's most precious natural resources here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I view my role as a state legislator to give me an opportunity to ensure that these resources are protected and protected for the present and future generations. One of my policy initiatives I supported was an omnibus energy bill to diversify the state's energy portfolio, and hopefully we'll be doing more with that this year. This is one initiative I think every year, or every session, that we're probably going to have to re-examine and look at again. Now, looking at with what's done nationally, the administration in Washington just relaxed some of their coal standards on discharging of certain wastes into rivers and streams. So we're also concerned with what's going to be going on with the EPA, and are they going to be relaxing more of the standards on air quality? And we have to try to meet our CO2 emission reduction standards. So this is probably something we'll be addressing again. But the legislation that was done last year procures additional clean energy resources to replace the aging power plants that are going offline, and it moves the Commonwealth closer to emission reduction goals under the Global Warming Solutions Act. The bill was ultimately signed into law by the governor last August as Chapter 188 of the Acts of 2016.
This report card marks the 32nd consecutive year that the Mass Audubon has reported on the environmental voting records of state legislators. The mission of the organization is to protect the nature of Massachusetts for people and for wildlife. To learn about Mass Audubon's legislative priorities, please visit their website, www.massaudubon.org/advocacy. It's a tongue twister.
Yes, it is.
I'd like to bring up one additional thing. I don't know what, we haven't set our meeting date for May yet, but Auburn will be having its annual town meeting coming up, and they'll also be having their town local elections.
Okay. And again, I strongly urge people to come out and vote in your town elections. It's funny, between the national, the state, and the local elections, the strongest vote turnout is the national, and the second largest is obviously the state, as far as percentage of voters that come out. But one of the most important votes or elections held to our public is or to the communities, is their local elections. There's so much of their daily lives are affected more by the selectmen's votes or the school committees or the planning boards than the legislature or the national government. So again, I would strongly urge people to pay attention and come out and vote. And actually, as we were sitting here, I was thinking there's a lot of things that have gone on, other things that have gone on in the legislature. I think the public knows that the legislature also voted to increase stipends after 32 years. And I'm not saying they're not warranted, because I think they should have been increased. But I think the level that it went up all at one time was a little too quick or extreme. Steep. Yeah, thank you. They actually, again, these stipends were established 32 years ago and have not been raised. But they end up doubling them, which again is, I think they were too steep of an increases. I think maybe we should have. So I voted against the pay raises, and I will not be taking the pay raises. But I think what a good alternative would have been for us to have voted in the pay raises, but not have them start until the following session. So this way, people running for those seats in the next election cycle, going into that cycle, would have elected the person going in knowing what the salaries would have been. And this way, it also, for the people who criticize the legislature for voting themselves pay raises, our base salary is not voted in by us. The governor is the one who actually recommends the salary of the legislators, and it's actually over the 5 years of an office, it's been reduced once and maybe twice. And other than my very first term, where they increased it, and actually I didn't take it then because I had just gotten elected, and 5 minutes later they were going to increase that salary. Then we had pay reductions. And then, so this is the first pay raise that that the legislators had in 5 years. And legislators, similar to everyone out there, have the same expenses that everyone else deals with. You've got family expenses, your mortgage, you're saving for education, trying to get by and provide for your family. So I think the pay raises are warranted. But the stipends are actually voted in by the legislators. So I think a good compromise would have been to go with these levels, but not have them enacted until the next session. And other things going on, the House will be starting their budget deliberations the last week of April. I think if I remember correctly, the House budget may be being released this week, April 13th or 14th. And then with school vacation week, the legislature pretty much goes quiet for a week, while there'll be no committee. I don't think there's any committee hearings, and it will give us the House time to the members to review their budget, get their amendments ready. And then I think they debate it the last week of April. And then we should have a show before then. But the Senate will do theirs. We'll release ours the third week of May and debate it the last week of May.
Okay. One of the things that's been brought to my attention, and you didn't touch on it when you were making some brief comments on the salaries. If a person does not accept the increase,
yep,
then it goes back to, like in the House, it goes back to the Speaker or the Leader of the House, and he can use that money as he sees fit. Is that true? It doesn't go back into the budget.
The general fund?
The general fund, right.
I'm not sure if it goes back to the Speaker or the Senate President, but I find it difficult that they would be able to spend it as they see fit, because you have to remember that's something that they have to budget for the next session. So if they institute that, if they apply those funds to something else, then that's something else that you either have to support next session, or you either got to cut, or you got to do something. But I will say this: it's one of the hardest votes on this issue was to vote for the pay raise and to take the pay raise, because that's the one that is the one that people are going to receive a lot of flack over, and it's easier politically to vote no. Financially, it's harder to vote no than not take the pay raise. So, but the easiest vote is to vote no. But what becomes difficult is when you vote no and then you don't take the pay raise. But it's very easy to, the hardest vote of this process, and I don't begrudge anyone for taking the money, because they, again, these are salaries and increases that should have been implemented over the years. But for the legislators who, that thought they needed, that this is something that should be done right now, they took a tough vote, and they've gotten a lot of responses from their constituents. Again, everybody wants a legislator who is out there 7 days a week, going to their events, going to the meetings they want. But then when it comes, there's never a good time for a pay raise for a legislator. So.
Okay, one other point that you brought up this morning concerning the elections and the importance of the local election being the lowest as far as turnout is concerned. I'd like to stress to people in Auburn that the vote of the town meeting is the final decision on what takes place on the expenditure of monies on the budget. It's not the school committee, it's not the Board of Selectmen, it's the town meeting that makes the final decision. And the importance of that, and that's why it's very important that you get out and vote and express your feelings on the election and who's running.
Yeah. And again, if you look at the votes that the selectmen and school committee make, the money that comes in from the state reverts to their control, or actually to the control of the voters who go to town meeting. And then it's the role of the selectmen and the school committee to administer that. They look at your tax rate, your zoning, things that affect the everyday life of the citizens of the town. Mostly, we pass a lot of general laws that affect everyone, but the direct control over what your property tax rate is in your town, and what funding levels you're funding your schools at, the level of services that you expect and want, that's all vested in, that authority is all vested into the power of your local authority, your local elected officials.
Right. Well, I want to thank you for coming in this morning.
Oh, thank you.
And we'll try to get a date before you say the budget, or after?
Yeah, hopefully before the budget. Hopefully.
Before the budget next month.
And actually, I want to wish everyone a happy Patriots Day, and hopefully they enjoy it and have a safe holiday.
Same here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.